Hello and good evening, friends. Welcome.
Thank you all for being here tonight.
Hello.
Hello.
It's so good to see faces.
Yeah. Oh, I need to turn, speaking of, I need to turn on my video. Okay, here we go.
There you go. Hey, Sharon.
Yay.
Hey, Sharon.
Hello. Oh, hi, Nikki.
Oh, fun.
I guess we're going to miss music tonight, but
Yeah,
just there'll be other times
thank God.
that there will be. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
I'll give it just another minute for people to roll in, but since there's only a few of us right now, if people want to go around and say hi, say what city they're from, say what they're hoping to glean from the night really quickly, you could do that.
Well, I'll go. I'm Mickey Carroll. I live in Petaluma, and I'm just I love daily acts in general, so I wanted to do something with you guys. But I particularly have a couple of like shrubs and trees that I am wondering if I can get some advice on. So that's why I'm here.
Great. Thanks for sharing, Mickey.
Of other things, I've got a list. now.
Good. We love it.
I'm Sharon Morgan, and I'm in Cotati. I'm a Petaluma expat, so, but I actually met Nikki just this past year. So we've gotten to know each other. And I've done a tiny bit of volunteering with Daily Acts, and I've also worked with Dustin here in Cotati with Farmster and some other things he's done. So I have kind of general questions about pruning perennials. So nothing too specific right now, but we'll probably get into, the things that will answer my questions.
That's fantastic. And if everybody else, like if you guys want to type into the chat too and send it to everybody, I'd love to hear what everyone's hoping to learn tonight. We'll get started in just another minute here. If maybe one more person wants to share out.
Hey there, I'm Casey. I missed the other intro, so I was not sure what to do or how much to say, but I'm just interested in, as I just noted in the chat, I got a lot of Salvia, and they seem to all maybe want a different thing. So I just want to learn more about that. And then also some catnip that I just like cut back really sort of significantly this winter, but I wasn't sure if there's a way to keep it sort of bigger, if that's really the right thing to do. Anyway, I'm going to do my best to listen in. I will have my kids running around momentarily, so I'll probably be on mute most of the time.
Well, that's fantastic, Casey. Thanks for sharing. And Annie will be talking a lot about Salvias tonight, so you're in the right place.
Awesome. Thanks.
Okay, with all of that being said, I guess it's time to get started. So welcome everybody to Garden Office Hours, Pruning Woody Perennials. We are so grateful for our partner, the city of Petaluma, who allows us to have awesome meetings like this. We're really grateful for their support through everything that's been going on in the last year. My name is Serena, and I'm a programs coordinator at Daily Acts, and I'm accompanied today by my coworker, Annie, who's the senior programs coordinator at Daily Acts.
Hey, everyone.
So before we get totally started, I'm just curious, who here has heard of Daily Acts before? Maybe raise your hand. Okay, so a pretty good amount of people here. Hi, Leslie. And then for those of you who don't know us, our mission is to inspire transformative action that creates connected, equitable, and climate resilient communities. Our values and principles really drive the work that we do. We deeply believe in being the change, in starting with your heart, in nurturing community, and in persevering with joy, because really, without joy, what do we have? And then what do we do? Well, Daily Acts does a whole lot, but the way I like to put it is we're holistically addressing the climate crisis in Sonoma County and beyond. To give you a few little examples of what we do, in the sustainability bucket, which is where Annie and I mainly live, we're trying to give people the skills, tools, and resources to grow their own food, to create habitat, to save environmental resources. In our leadership training, we have the Leadership Institute for Just and Resilient Communities, where it's a 10-month program that we're training leaders to step up into the many challenges that our community faces, from fires to floods, and embrace the complexity of the interconnected systems at play. For the environmental health bucket, we are home to the North Bay Environmental Health Network, where our wonderful environmental health program manager, Nicole Warwick, is leading with education and resources for our frontline agricultural workers and their communities here in Sonoma County. Also in the last year, we adopted the Eco to School program, which is inspiring youth to take immediate climate action. And then we do all of this through personal ecology, through leading with our hearts, and through, being in the moment and taking time to presence ourselves and feel it all, because these are really heavy times that we're living in. So I just wanted to go over a few little Zoom meeting etiquette things before we fully dive in today. First of all, we made this a meeting instead of a webinar because we just really wanted to see your guys' faces and interact. But while we're doing this quick 30-minute presentation, if you could keep your microphone on mute, that would be greatly appreciated. Also, if a question arises during Annie's presentation, please use the chat box. If something seems relevant and needs to be answered immediately, I'll let Annie know about it. But all other questions will be saved for the end when we can all have a nice chat and discussion about what we presented today. And then finally, as you might have already noticed, this is being recorded, and we'd like to record the chat afterwards. However, if anybody here is uncomfortable with being recorded, please just send me a private message and I'll make sure that we don't record our conversation afterwards. And with that being said, I'm super excited to introduce my coworker, Annie Silverman, my favorite plant person.
Great. I'm so happy you all are here today to talk about pruning. I absolutely love the topic of pruning because after you've pruned your plant, it gives you so much satisfaction. You're able to see all of that work that you've done in that moment. And you know that by pruning your plant, you are going to be creating the structure for a healthier, more vibrant, more beautiful and blooming plant in the future. So we're going to go over which tools to use and a general overview of why we should prune. And then we'll talk about when and how to prune, and then what to do with that green waste or green material, not actually waste, after you're done pruning. So jumping into tools. At Daily Hacks, we always love to start our events with a quote. And I chose the quote, "I love spring anywhere, but if I could choose, I would always greet it in a garden," by Ruth Stout. And since you all are here today to talk about pruning, I'm guessing that you agree that life is better if you can spend at least some portion of it out in the garden. Now we'll talk about tools. So when I'm doing most of my pruning, especially of smaller woody perennials, I'm using a bypass pruner. And these bypass pruners are best for any kind of plant matter up to about 1/2 inch in diameter. And that's really about the size of a pencil. It's really tempting to use bypass pruners for plant material that's larger than the size of a pencil. So, you're going and then there's one branch that's a little thicker and you don't want to have to change tools. But I really recommend you for the health of your hands too, not to stress your hands by trying to prune things that are too much over that diameter, as well as for the plant itself. And then if you have branches that are more than 1/2 inch diameter, we recommend using loppers. Those are really great for plant material up to about 2 inches in diameter, and then beyond that, a pruning saw. And a note on tools, that you can buy a really expensive fancy pair of tools, but they need maintenance. You'll need to clean them and sharpen their blades for them to really be effective tools throughout the seasons. And sharp tools are so important towards creating that nice clean cut in which you really you don't see any kind of fractured plant material. You can think about when you cut yourself with a really sharp knife, it's a nice clean slice, but if you cut yourself with a dull slice, or a dull knife, it actually takes a lot longer to heal from that. And the chances of having a wound that are more susceptible to infection are higher when you have a dull when you make a cut with a dull implement. So we really recommend cleaning and sharpening your tools. And a note on tools, that there are lots of different debates on which tools are best, and we really welcome that discussion when we get back to our chat. So save your comments and suggestions and ideas and tip sharing for where to get tools and which ones are best for later. Okay, so diving into salvias. Salvias are one of my personal favorites. I have 5 different varieties in my yard. And at Daily Acts, we use salvias in a lot of our different landscape designs because they are so versatile, so beautiful, mostly low water use, and provide a lot of nectar to our pollinators. So we'll be talking about salvias. You can split them into 3 different groups. The first group that we're going to go over is that perennial deciduous sage. And salvias that fall into this category are the Mexican sage, pineapple sage, bog sage, and Salvia Waverly, just to name a few. One of the most common is that Mexican sage and also the pineapple sage. And you can see that it puts on this really beautiful, vibrant, kind of fountain shape of blooms. It's best to cut it back to the ground in late winter or early spring. These types of deciduous salvias regenerate from the base. They send off like little sprouts all the way at the bottom. And when they're done flowering, you'll have all of these spent kind of they're woody, but they're not too firm and woody. They're almost a little foamy branches that are dead because at the first frost, all of the plant material dies back. And so you'll want to cut them back all the way down to the base. It can feel like a little bit much. I was just laughing with Serena that if you've ever cut your bangs before and you go really, really short, it can feel stunning and shocking. And, you know, you can't really go any shorter once you've made those first cuts. And so when I was pruning my Mexican sage about a month and a half ago, I didn't cut all the way down to the base. I left a little bit of safety space to see how it looked for a week or two. And now I'm realizing that I really should have cut a little bit lower because I still have some of less active plant material and a lot of nice growth at the base. So I'm going to take mine down even further. And I recommend when you're pruning, if you're just getting comfortable with it, to make your first cuts and have them be a little bit more conservative. And then if you need to go back and take more, you can always take more. So those are what you do with perennial deciduous sages. Cut them back almost to the base and allow for all of that beautiful growth to come up from the base. And then the next class of salvias that we're going to be talking about are perennial woody salvias. And salvias that fall into this category are the really popular, I'm just getting distracted by that comment about my pineapple sage is flowering, still cut it to the base. My pineapple sage is still flowering too. And so I actually didn't cut it all the way down to the base. I left about, I actually left about 2 feet up. So I'm still seeing some flowers and I'm wondering at what point I want to cut it all the way down to the base or not. So if you cut it all the way down to the base, it will regenerate and you will have an abundant growth of flowers. In fact, you'll probably have more flowers if you do cut it down to the base, but then you will sacrifice having some beautiful flowers now. So I'm kind of not totally sure what to do with mine. I did prune it back considerably, but haven't taken it all the way back. All right, so those perennial woody sage, salvias or sages. You'll hear me say salvia and sage, and they both mean the same thing. Salvia is just the genus or Latin name for it. Okay, so for salvias that are woodier, things like Salvia gregii, which is autumn sage, or hot lip sage, or germander sage, or scarlet sage, or any of those Salvia microphylla, which are the ones with the little leaves and lovely pitcher-shaped flowers. They end up growing and have a strong, strong woody base. And with these plants, it's really important to prune them regularly so that they don't develop a lot of wood and then flowering green material only on the top 1/3 part of the plant. And what you can do for them is to cut them back to about 6 to 8 inches So you're basically looking at your woody frame and you're choosing which of those branches you want to remain. And then you're cutting back ones that are going to be crossing, and you're cutting back any plant branches that look unhealthy. And you're actually selecting your primary branches that are going to get thicker over time and be your good structure for your salvia. If you don't prune woody salvias over time, they will have lots of crossing branches. They will have a big woody frame that will have increasing amounts of more bare space as they put out new growth only at the top. And if you let this happen for 4 or 5 years, you might see that you only have green really in the top, maybe foot of your plant. And at that point, it can, so these salvias don't really enjoy when you cut into their woody frame when they're already established. And so if you have a 5 or 6 year old plant that has foliage only in the top part of it, and you want to really take drastic action and try cutting it back, always cut it back to the first set of healthy, just above the first set of healthy leaves at a 45-degree angle, leaving as little of space as possible, because any kind of space that you leave is going to die, and then you'll have like sticking up above your green foliage that's coming up. And if you want to take even more drastic measures and cut below those, it will likely kill your plant. But you may be surprised, you may have some regrowth happening. And if you are at a point where you need to take really drastic measures and you're willing to make big cuts into it to see if maybe you can rejuvenate it, it's okay if you're not able to, because these salvias grow really quickly and you can replace them with a 4-inch or gallon and have a robust plant within the next season or two. And it's also important to mention that perennials have a lifespan, and for some salvias, it's about 5 to 7 years. And so if you're seeing your salvias declining, or that it's just becoming woody with less green growth, it might be that it's just reaching its natural life cycle and it's ready for this plant to become compost. Okay, so our third class of salvias are the rosette forming salvias. One of the most popular of these varieties is woodland sage, and we have beautiful woodland sage growing at our living learning library, or our living learning garden at the Petaluma Library. It's in the back of the Petaluma Library. The Master Gardeners also has a stunning garden at the front of the library. And so if you go to check out plants, make sure to check out both gardens, and then poke your head around back and see some of the beautiful salvia examples that we do have. And for this spiral forming or rosette forming plant, you are going to want to prune back the rosette once it has finished blooming and starts to become kind of brown and dies off. And you'll prune back the rosette all the way to the closest set of healthy leaves. And then you'll gently rake the plant to remove any kind of dead leaves that are on the exterior or even in the center of the plant. And a word about taking off flower heads. Those flower heads are really tasty seed material for our native songbirds. And so if you can, if it fits your aesthetic and your fire safer landscaping practices, we recommend leaving some of those on for the birds. Okay. So we're going to go over some of our other favorites. We have Penstemon. That SPP means species, and there are a lot of different cultivars of Penstemon. The straight native species is the Penstemon heterophyllus, and that has kind of a bluish purple color, but there are just so many. There's a rainbow color of different cultivars that you can have. And we'll also talk about sticky monkey flower. And so first, with Penstemon, you can get 2 blooming cycles with your Penstemon if you're diligent about pruning back those spent flowers in the summer and into the fall time. And for Penstemon, that's really, we snuck in a couple of our favorites that aren't woody perennials. This one doesn't really have a very woody base, but wanted to include it anyways. That is all you really need to do for Penstemon. It's one of the lowest of our low maintenance plants. Just prune back the spent heads and to encourage more blooming and always leave some if you can for the birds. And then with sticky monkey flower, I want to just add that when you're choosing your sticky monkey flower, there are two different varieties of sticky monkey flower. There's the Diplacus and the Mimulus. And the I actually have not studied the formal pronunciation of plant names, so I always feel a little bit self-conscious when I'm saying some of these. I might be mispronouncing it. But the Diplacus is a lower water use, whereas the Mimulus actually prefers a kind of riparian environment. And so when you're choosing your sticky monkey flowers, really do pay close attention to the water use needs. I have made that mistake before when I was out at Amarisa and they were out of the sticky monkey flower that I wanted. And so I just grabbed another one thinking it's going to be a great sub. And it turned out that the one that I grabbed is one of the ones that prefers that really moist environment and has high water use needs, and it unfortunately perished in our low water use garden. So do pay attention to that one. And when you are maintaining these, they have such gorgeous flowers in as early as April and May. They're one of the earlier bloomers. We have some, I think, 3 different colors of Mimulus planted in density at Robbins Park in Windsor that are absolutely gorgeous. If you find yourself in Windsor, do check those out. And they do need to be pruned back after they're done flowering, which is really late summer, early fall, to about a foot. And by pruning them back to a foot, you're eliminating that. Once they're done flowering, they have this dry, dead material. And so you're cutting all of that back and allowing that plant to have this really vigorous green growth that it will then be the stems that they produce those flowers on. So if you don't prune your sticky monkey flower back, you'll have fewer flowers. It'll only be able to grow at the tips, and you'll only have some flowers on the tips. By pruning it back, you're allowing it to put on that lush green growth and then have all of these sites for flowers come early summer, late spring, early summer.
Okay, Annie, Leslie Lee has a plant ID test question for you.
Okay.
By chance, do you know what the orange plant behind the Penstemon is?
I would
Like the little orange buds.
guess that it's a Leonidas,
Okay, but we don't know. We're not sure.
but I don't know.
Sorry, Leslie.
As you see, just my forehead getting closer and closer to my computer screen here. It's a good question, though. I do love that combination of purples and oranges, and actually the Penstemon and the sticky monkey flower are a really lovely combo too. Highly recommend those. All right, California fuchsia. So California fuchsias, epilobiums, come in so many different varieties, and those varieties determine the overall plant size. Some are ground cover, some get to be 4 to 6 inches tall, and some can be over 18 inches tall. And with the upright fuchsias, it's important to give them a little haircut called tipping in the springtime, which encourages more lateral growth. And that lateral growth has more bud sites, as well as gives the plant a little bit more width to be able to withstand all of those beautiful flowers that are going to be gracing your plant come bloom time. And if your plant becomes too loaded down with flowers, it'll actually fall over, and then you'll see some exposed, dead, or woodier materials in the middle of it. And so you can prevent that from happening and keep your upright epilobiums actually upright by tipping or cutting back some of that growth in the early spring. For all varieties, you'll want to cut them down. Tipping how much? I would take off 1 inch to 2 and always above a set of healthy buds. But that can be something to experiment with. And when we get into the conversation portion of this, if anybody has experience with this and wants to share what they've done, I'd love to hear what you've done. I am really looking forward to this conversation part of it, because I realize that some people might have more pruning experiences than Serena and I, and we would love to hear everybody share those experiences as well. So with the fuchsia, oh wait, let's go back. cut them back to about 1 foot in early winter, 1 inch in early winter. And this will allow for that really beautiful growth to happen in the springtime and then the abundance of flowers. They can look a little bit scraggly if you don't do that. I actually have one in my backyard that I haven't cut down yet. And I am noticing that it's looking a little bit leggy. And so it could use its time to prune it back. All right, now we can go to the next slide. Thanks, Serena. All right, so getting creative with all of this green, we'll call it green material. When you're doing all of your pruning, you might end up with a fair amount of clippings. And there's a couple of different options. You can turn it into a living mulch or turn it into a mulch by cutting it into smaller pieces and spreading that around and just adding it to that layer of organic matter that's covering and protecting your soil. You can make a small habitat pile. And one thing to say about a small habitat pile is to always do that outside of that zone 0 or that 0 to 5 feet around your house. You do want to keep that clear of any kind of debris. And if you attend the Native Songbird webinar, I do believe that Veronica Bowers will talk more about this concept of gardening for your songbirds and really making sure that you're supporting their success with your gardening practices. But by creating these small piles, you're creating habitat for songbirds that like ground dwelling, as well as just material for them to make for their nests. Having some type of material like this on the ground, sticks especially, are really great habitat for beetles, which are an important part of the ecosystem. And if you are in an area that's a lot smaller, or you just have a general aesthetic that doesn't really have space for those types of piles, then send all of that to your green bins. If you live in Sonoma County, all of our green bin material is taken to Marin County and is then turned into compost. And so you're part of a regenerative cycle when you're putting all of your green waste clippings into the green bin. But a note on that is that shake off really well your plants if you're removing whole plants, because soil is not allowed in green bins. And the other thing about green bins is that they're really asking that you don't put any invasive species in them. And common invasive species in gardening around here would be things like oxalis. Oxalis has those really, I think they're really lovely yellow flowers right now. Miner's lettuce, you can also eat the leaves, but they are invasive and they can just take over. And crabgrass is another one, or Bermuda grass. Lords and ladies are the kind of spade-shaped plant that can crop up a lot. So know which of the weeds that you're trying to remove from your yard are invasive, and don't put those in the green waste bins. Unfortunately, those do need to go to the trash to prevent them from spreading into other people's yards. And with that,
a really cool question, Annie, that came up was like, what kind of equipment is needed to make a living mulch?
Oh, okay. So to turn your green waste into mulch, you really just want to chop it up into pieces. Oxalis in the black bin. Sorry, I distracted. Yes, oxalis in the black bin, unfortunately, if you're removing that from your yard. You do want to just chop it up into pieces that you feel comfortable with. And you can do that with your loppers. You can do that, I would say primarily loppers. You're probably looking at pieces that are no more than 2 inches in diameter if you are looking to create mulch out of that. And that's just a lot of like chop, 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 so that you can disperse and spread that. All right, so I'll hand it back over to Serena, who's going to tell you about some of our upcoming events and ways that you can continue engaging with Dailiacs, and then stay put, because we're going to get back into our conversation where we'll be able to answer these chat questions and be able to really learn from each other. All right, Serena.
Thank you, Annie. Yeah, so just hang tight for a few more minutes. I wanted to tell you guys about some upcoming opportunities and events that I think you guys might be interested while I have you all here, and then we'll jump right into our conversation. So the first one I wanted to bring to your attention, this is especially for anybody who's included in the Petaluma community. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to live in Petaluma. You could work in Petaluma, spend a lot of time in Petaluma, and just be really involved in Petaluma. we are starting the Petaluma Equitable Climate Action Coalition. And basically what this is going to be is it's going to be a group of 6 people who are really, really interested and passionate about climate action, who want to make tangible change, but don't know where to begin, or maybe they just don't have the resources to begin. So the idea here is that it's going to be a 6-month-long program, 10 hours a month from April to September. A $1,800 stipend is going to be given, which I think is pretty cool. But basically, the idea is that coalition members are going to receive training and a stipend to provide recommendations on how Petaluma should prioritize climate action. So you're going to be able to provide recommendations on the recent climate action framework that the city of Petaluma came up with. If you know anybody from the age of 14 years old and over who you think would be interested in this, please help us spread the word. The applications for this close next Wednesday, March 10th, and we're trying to get a few more applications through the door. So if you're excited about this, or you know somebody who's excited about this, you can find more action, or you can find more information at dailyaxe.org/climate action. And I'm going to include all the links in my follow-up email to you guys when this meeting is over. So second, we wanted to bring you guys' attention. This was our first monthly garden office hour, but our next one is going to be on Thursday, April 1st at the same time. And we're going to talk about the city of Petaluma's Mulch Madness program, which is just like so amazing and awesome, and we want to make sure you guys know about it. So did you know that the city of Petaluma offers free mulch, compost, cardboard, and an irrigation conversion kit to customers who wish to sheet mulch our existing turf? Well, if you didn't know, now you know. And we just happen to be experts at the Mulch Madness program and sheet mulching. It's what Daily Axe does best. Maybe not best, but what the sustainability programs does best. So if you'd love to join us for a conversation on that, we'd love to have you. And that's going to be on Thursday, April 1st.
And I just wanted to mention for anybody who is not living in the city of Petaluma, that many other cities also have some type of cash for grass or turf conversion programs. And so we still recommend, if you're interested in converting your lawn, to join us, because we'll walk you through the process of how to do that. And then you can just tune into what your city can offer you in terms of rebates.
Thank you, Annie. Another webinar that I think you guys might be interested in is coming up on Tuesday, March 16th. It's our Water-Wise Gardening for Birds and Pollinators. And if any of you know Veronica Bowers from Native Songbird Care and Conservation, you know this is going to be an incredible presentation. She's going to be talking about how to build habitat in our gardens to support pollinators and other wildlife. And she's also going to give a tour of her amazing garden, and she'll show you some photos of all the birds that come to this garden all throughout the year. So it's going to be a great presentation. If you're interested in that sort of thing, definitely recommend going over. And then the last event I wanted to bring to your guys' attention is a pollution prevention webinar series that we're doing in partnership with the city of Petaluma. There's going to be 2 parts to this webinar series. One's going to focus on household actions we can take to prevent pollution, and the other is going to focus on landscape actions. And basically where this is coming from is anybody who lives in Petaluma knows that last year the Petaluma River finally got dredged. But what came out of this was the dredge material that the city of Petaluma was hoping to use at Schellenberger and in the Petaluma Marsh for some rehabilitation projects actually was full of about 10 years worth of trash and plastics just broken down and really worked into that silt. And what happened was a group of volunteers actually went through and had to manually remove all of that trash from that material so that it could still be used. So in hopes of preventing something like this from happening in the future and keeping our waterways and our watershed cleaner, we decided to host a few webinars about actions that we can take at home to prevent this from happening in the future. And then finally, we just want to give a special thanks to our sponsors because we really couldn't do our work without them. And with that being said, thanks for coming today. So excited to jump into this conversation. Both of our email addresses are here if you want to reach out to us. But with that being said, let's talk pruning. Everyone feel free to unmute at this point and show your faces.
Yeah, great to see you all. This is so lovely to have this type of conversation. We're used to holding webinars where we know you're all out there, but we don't see you. And it's great to be able to interact this way. So we can start off with a question that came up in the chat about pruning butterfly bush. How many people have a butterfly bush in their spaces? No idea.
Oh, nice.
All right, quite a few. Yeah, quite a few. So we inherited our butterfly bush. I don't know how old it was when we inherited it. But it had a lot of crossing branches and looked a little scraggly and had, I would say, like 15 different stems. And with butterfly bush, it's recommended that you choose the amount of stems that you want to be your primary long, arcing, graceful leaders. And usually I've heard about 4 or 5 is what most people go with. And you're going to prune those in the late winter, so now, or we actually pruned ours a little while ago. And the reason for that is the butterfly bush produce their flowers on current season's growth. So all of that growth that results after you're done pruning your butterfly bush is going to be where you're going to see those flowers happening. If you don't prune back your butterfly bush, it's going to be, depending on the variety that you have, maybe 4 feet tall or 6 feet tall, and it's going to put on some more growth at those tips. And then you'll just see a few flowers all the way at the top. But if you do cut it back, then it's going to have flower sites all along the plant. And so this is an example where you might be using your loppers to cut back some of the first, initial growth, especially if it's a little bit overgrown. You might be using loppers to cut it down to a few feet, and then you might be getting your pruning saw out and you'll be cutting into the base of your butterfly bush to cut away some of the leaders that you no longer want, especially if you're doing some rehabilitation. So when you're cutting away those leaders that you no longer want, you're actually going to cut as close to the ground as you can because you're really hoping to eliminate them. So you are wanting to cut below that first set of healthy leaves so that you can eliminate it.
Of all of you who have butterfly bushes, have you guys pruned them before, or have they just been unpruned?
And if anybody has some pruning tips to go with that for their butterfly bush, we'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Sharon?
I have one that's a volunteer, and of course the phone rings right now. I have one that's a volunteer, and it went unpruned for a few years. So it was about 10 feet tall. And then I decided to prune it this year, and I pruned it to about a foot off the ground, straight across. And I got a little distracted when you were explaining about pruning, but that's what I had heard for those, just to do what's called, I guess in England, it's called stooling, which if anybody has a new baby, that has a different meaning, but my understanding is that means you cut something off straight across close to the ground.
Yeah, about 6 to 8 inches.
Oh, okay. 8 inches, because it's pretty, it has some stalks that are maybe 3 inches in diameter. So it's pretty woody, but it's going to be better this year.
Yeah, and that's why I'd recommend getting a nice sharp pruning saw and cutting into your pruning saw.
Beth had her hand up first, and then we'll do Leslie.
So I have, there's the typical purple buddleia, but I have the yellow one that has the globes.
Yeah, me too.
It's really cool, but it doesn't seem to have big stalks. It seems to be more, I don't know the biologic term, but it has more,
more thinner, kind of longer arching.
No, it doesn't have those. It has just, it has, I don't know, it looks like a tree more.
Okay. Well,
is it supposed to have big stalks like the purple ones?
Mine does.
Okay.
I would recommend, whenever I'm trying to figure out the first steps to take for pruning, is to try and ID it and figure out what type it is, and then go from there, because there are so many different varieties that have different growth habits. But if you can just figure out what type you have and then get some advice on.
They have big shoots, like the purple ones do.
Interesting.
Sounds like it might have a main leader, and then, like you said, like a trunk, and then it
right,
like a tree. Is that what you said?
Yeah, like branches out.
We can look into that. Part of what we'll also be doing is just jotting down some things that we don't know the answers to. And if we can, we'll follow up in that email with some ideas for you. All right, Leslie.
I just had a clarifying question for the butterfly bush. So it sounds like to remove the leaders that you don't want, you take those to the ground.
Yeah.
The rest you prune to 8 inches
Yeah.
in the late winter.
Yes, it looks
That's
very
pretty
good.
small, pretty short. And so well, I have one that we inherited, and I only pruned the dead stuff, and I didn't know what to do with it, so I left it.
Mhm.
And it's probably about 6 feet.
Yeah.
And it is growing pretty fully,
Mhm.
but is it too late? Because it's been warm, so things are starting to kind of bud out. Is it too late to take it to 8 inches from 6 feet, or leave it?
I don't think it's too late because you're going to take it above a healthy set of buds. You might be impacting the amount of new growth that it's going to put on this spring, and thus impacting the amount of flowers you're going to get, but you won't kill your plant as long as you're taking it down to above a healthy set of buds. It looks really extreme. We were in the same position for ours. We had inherited it, and it was dense and crossing and about 6 or 7 feet tall. And so the first year we didn't prune it as hard. I think we maybe only pruned it to 2 or 3 feet, but I think now we pruned it back more. So it was just that confidence building of, should I really take this down to 6 to 8 inches? And yes, you really can take it down that far. It is very extreme looking though when you do it.
And how much growth would one expect in that season, like in terms of inches?
Depending on the type that you have, they can put on 4 to 5 feet of growth within a season.
Wow. Okay, it's the purple kind.
Yeah, I think that's the.
Thank you.
I also cut mine about 3 feet in late winter, and it's really bushy now, and it's probably about 4 feet high now with a lot of new growth. So should I cut it down further now, or just let it be this year and next year do it a little lower?
It's not going to kill the plant either way. I think it depends on what you're looking for. I probably would let it be at this point and then just trim it a little bit more aggressively or prune it a little more aggressively the next year. But it's kind of up to you on that one.
That sounds good. I also have a question about the salvia. You talked about a lot of salvias, but one that wasn't mentioned was, I think they're hybrids of the Clevelandii. It's the Pozo blue and the Allen chickering. What category are they in?
Those have woody bases. And so I put those in the same category as the Salvia gregii and the microphylas.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
How about anybody else that we haven't heard from yet? What questions did you guys bring? They could be apart from butterfly bush questions.
How about Tagetes lemonii? Is that, do you guys know about that plant? It's called, I think the common name is Mexican bush sunflower or
Marigold.
Yeah. We had
marigold, yes. Mexican marigold.
We had that at our site at Kavanaugh Recreation Center, and we actually ended up relocating it to a different site because it got to be so tall and so bushy. And with this one, you can cut it back, and it kind of depends on the shape that you want. When you cut any plant back, when you reduce its height, you're going to increase the lateral growth. And so if you want a really kind of dense shrub looking plant, then you can reduce the lateral growth and have a denser plant. And it's very hardy. We have actually tried to eliminate it a couple times because it was at a site where it was blocking, shading out our espalier fruit trees, and it just grew back with vigor. So Yeah. Did you have a
Okay.
specific question about it or?
No, that I just wondered if you're supposed to cut it back or just let it grow, or, mine's looking a little, I just planted it last spring, I guess, or maybe in the summer. So it's not a very old plant, but it's the branches are somewhat leggy on it. I mean, they're almost flopping down a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking it might be good to cut it back a little bit to
Yeah, cut
strengthen it
back
up a little.
and then you'll have a little more control of the way it grows. Otherwise, it can get really dense. I would follow the same idea with other woody perennials where you cut them back, leaving a few feet and above a healthy set of buds. But a quick search on that will let you know what to do too.
Definitely don't have to worry about killing that plant though.
No, we have hacked away at it in our attempts to reduce its size and then eventually to cut it back so we could dig it out and move it over to Pocket Park for our Quitati resident here.
Did it transplant successfully?
Well, Serena, have you been back out there to be able to see if it transplanted successfully?
It actually didn't go to Pocket Park.
What,
Some
didn't?
people who volunteered at our program that day took it home.
Oh,
It was
okay.
actually some of your students.
Okay.
But I think I didn't
somewhere.
hear otherwise, so I'm guessing it did. We really cut it back though when we took it out because the thing was like 6 feet tall and 4 feet wide. So we cut it down pretty short so that the roots that we had cut out would hopefully make it survive.
Was that Pocket Park in Quitati or one in Petaluma? Oh, the one in Quitati?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I'm sorry, which plant were you talking about?
Oh, the Mexican marigold.
But I stand corrected.
Okay.
It didn't end up going there. It went home with some students
Oh,
from the Santa Rosa
okay.
Senior College class.
I was going to ride my bike over there and take a look. Haven't been over there for a while.
If you're ever at Wildflower Bakery in Freestone, right near the bakery itself, there's a great garden. And at the entrance to the garden is a wonderful Taji's, whatever that one is, Mexican marigold. Oh my God, it's huge.
And it has really fragrant leaves too.
Oh, it's so smelly good, yes.
Yeah.
Another plant I was wondering about is cistus, rock rose. It's a somewhat woody plant and they can get fairly large. Is that a good one to cut back?
I actually don't have experience pruning a cistus. We can follow up with you on that one. Do other people have experience pruning cistus here? Leslie? Want to share with us?
Yeah, we inherited a pretty mature one that was approximately 6 by 6 when we moved in. Actually, it was probably, height was probably like 3 feet high by 6 by 6. And yes, it grows and spreads very easily. I've just been trimming it to keep it in the space that I want it. It's very vigorous and very hardy. So I don't have experience cutting it anything drastic, but it takes the regular pruning any time of the year whenever it's beyond its bounds, essentially.
But
And did you have experience too?
It's a spring flower. It flowers in the spring.
Spring, yes.
Don't prune it now. Don't mess with it now.
Oh yeah, no. Well, unless it's really, I did prune it earlier, but there's so much. I mean, it's probably now 6 by 6 feet by 2.5 feet because it was. I pruned the straggly parts that stick up, and don't look good. So
Smells really good too, doesn't it? It's a good
oh,
smell.
I'll have to smell it. I don't know if I remember smelling
rub
it.
the
So thank
leaves.
you. I will stick my nose in it in a month or so.
Get to know plants by rubbing their leaves.
Mm.
Yummy.
Another plant I'm curious about is Lavatera Maritima, or it's a bushy thing that might become tree-like. I'm not sure. Is that something that should be cut back
Tree
on a
mallow.
regular basis?
I We just incorporated a tree mallow into one of our landscapes, and I have not yet had the experience of pruning it. And so that can be something that we can give you some follow-up on, unless anybody does have some experience with pruning the tree mallow.
It's a coastal, it comes from the coast, so I wonder when is it a summer flower? I think so.
I think so,
And
yeah.
when I'm in doubt, I'm Italian, so I always feed everything constantly. So any errors that we make in pruning, we can, kind of compensate for by throwing fertilizer down and before you water, before the rain. Just do a little organic granular fertilizer and you'll get great results and wonder why later. How did that turn out so good? I don't know, because I fed it early and often.
There's a beautiful example of that one at the Petaluma Library in that front garden area, in the Master Gardener area. If you're curious about what that one's going to look like, and it is, gosh, probably 8 feet tall.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's good for butterflies.
Mickey.
I have a weeping cherry blossom tree.
Mhm.
Have you run into those? It's starts at the top and there's long, beautiful branches that come down and they'll grow all the way down to and drag on the ground.
Yeah.
And then you get cherry blossoms all the way down these beautiful branches. The first year that I had it, because it was getting so long and hitting the ground, I trimmed it at the bottom, just, cut near a growth bud. Well, it's now growing branches out.
Mhm.
I made the cuts. So it's looking like, when you get hat hair,
Yeah.
hat on when your hair is still damp and it's like, poof. So is there some way to avoid that? And what can I do now about all of those little extra branches?
I would need to do some additional research on this one, but I believe that it ends up getting pulleted back to its primary branch structure. And so that means that you take off the entire growth back to its, kind of like how you see those mulberry trees, flowering mulberry trees, that they ended up getting plotted back to their primary structure. I would need to check back up on that. And so we can include some follow-up on that one. Daylac certainly has less experience on some of these gorgeous ornamentals, but it's something that I've seen in the neighborhood and just observed that I do believe it gets kind of cut back to its main structure. But if anybody else
Gotcha.
has more experience with that one, please share. Okay, we'll give you some follow-up on that one, Nikki.
Thank you. Thank you.
I planted a ribis. I think this is its second spring.
Mm-hmm.
And it's doing really well. It's blooming right now. And it's, the shoots are kind of leggy and I'm really just letting it grow at this point, except that there were a few branches that came out because it's in our side yard. So when it sort of intruded on that space, I cut off those lateral branches, but otherwise I'm just letting it do its thing. So does it ever need pruning unless it gets huge or starts to encroach on an area? Or
Do you know what type of ribis you have?
I don't remember.
Does it have those kind of drooping pink flowers?
Yes, it has, with a really pungent smell.
Yes. Yeah, love that one. I have one of those.
Which one is that? Do you know the name of it?
Yeah, it's a Ribes sanguineum and it might be a King Edward.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh goodness, those are some of my favorites.
Yeah.
And so we actually made the mistake when we moved into our house a few years back. We ended up reducing water. The area had gotten a lot of water and really almost killed it, and ended up cutting into that wood structure. And now it has a very funny growth because since we cut so drastically into it, it has all of these verticals. And so I wouldn't recommend doing that. It did revive the plant for us, but now it looks a little funny. I wouldn't recommend pruning it too much more than just maybe taking back a little bit of that top growth. Because when you do those drastic cuts to it, it kind of changes that really lovely cup-like
Okay.
form that it has.
Yeah, as I said, I only did a couple of
Yeah.
smaller lateral branches. that
Yeah,
were
whenever
kind
you
of-
have any crosses or any kind of dead material, you can prune those back.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Serena. Yeah, I'll go I haven't looked at that garden yet on the back side of the library. I'll have to go check it out.
It's one of my favorite gardens that we
Yeah.
have, honestly.
Yeah, it looks really nice from the road. Yeah.
All right, Beth.
So Phlomis, I think, I don't know what its normal name is.
Jerusalem sage.
Jerusalem sage, right.
Yeah.
I have both the yellow and the purple.
Ooh, purple. Interesting. I mostly see the yellow. Okay.
I got it at the native plant nursery in Fulton, on Fulton.
Yeah, Calflora.
Yeah, Calflora, that place.
They're great.
Anyways, mine is doing really well, but all I do is cut the dead flowers off of it. Is that what you're supposed to do?
I would recommend treating it more like Mexican sage, where you actually cut it all the way back to the base, because you'll notice that it puts out these little like growth really close to the base. And we have planted a lot of Phlomis over the time at our model landscapes, and some of them are 5 or 6 feet in diameter. I mean, they have gotten so huge. They're probably 8 or 9 years old at this point, and they have a lot of dead growth in their center. And it's not, with those, they're a lot more forgiving because they aren't woody perennials. They're more of that kind of like woody foamy perennial. And so you have a little more leeway with them. But I would cut it back cut it back pretty severely. And that'll encourage a lot of nice green growth and a little more manageable size over time.
Yeah. No, mine will have a lot of room. So
if you want them to get really big,
like
then
12 feet.
let them go.
They'll go.
Yeah, they will. They will get bigger than I really thought they would.
What time of year would you recommend cutting back a Butylon?
A Butylon, I believe, grow on spring growth. And so, bye Mickey, thank you. They believe they grow on spring growth, and so that you would want to prune them in late fall, early winter, so that they can then put on that nice green growth and flower on it. Does that sound right, Pam?
I don't know. I asked you. It wasn't a rhetorical question.
Sorry. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's, I haven't actually pruned my Butylon yet, but I will look into that one as well.
Thanks.
All upcoming.
All right, we're getting close to our time here. Does anybody have a last minute question or comment that they want to share?
Just
I
want
have
to
a
thank
quick question about Nandina. I think it's Nandina, the heavenly bamboo, kind of woody with the red berries right now. They are a foot away from the house, and with all the home hardening Firewise recommendations, I am thinking of either taking them down to 18 inches, which would look okay from the outside, but terrible because they kind of break up the view, out the window. But any thoughts on that? Like, they're still berries, and I haven't seen too many birds this year eating them. But should I wait till after the berries, or they're very woody?
Is your Nandina dormant? Has it?
I'm seeing very new growth. It's so woody and leggy that it's kind of falling over and impacting the walking path. And so I did do some trimming maybe a month or two ago, and I am seeing like some super new growth, just a little bit, but the rest of it is
Yeah,
woody,
I heard
so
the
I'm
best
not sure
time
if
to
it's
do
starting.
that is actually a couple of months ago, and it can more in the we are still in winter. It's important to remember that seasonally this is still winter time, but we've had such a warm winter that we are seeing a lot of new growth happening. But I've heard it's best to do that in winter when it's dormant, and to give it with a harder prune taking off about a third of the growth. With that being said, I have never personally pruned a Nandina.
I added it to our list.
Okay, awesome.
I have one that's also a volunteer. It's a little different variety. It doesn't have red berries. It has, I think they're a blue black berry. And I may end up taking it out because again, it just sprouted. But so what I did was very aggressive pruning, and it's really just kind of bare forked wood at this point. I took it down to everything. So we'll see what happens. If it dies, that's okay. But if it grows, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, go ahead, Beth.
Okay, I have one more. It's not a native, but it's the Brugmansia, which in my garden, because we have frost here, it dies. It's very frost sensitive, but then it comes back all the time. And I didn't know, so I cut it down all the way, all the frost things that have died, and it comes back every year. So I'm kind of wondering, should I leave the sticks, 6 feet tall, or should I just always cut off the frost killed?
Trumpet flower or angel flower? The Brugmansia? Okay.
Yeah, trumpet, angel trumpet.
Or angel trumpet flower. Okay, good. Yeah. You see that a lot in Oakland and in places that are more tropical.
Actually, I'm very jealous of my friends that live in the peninsula because they all have it, and at the coast they have it. San Francisco has it. It's a beautiful flower, has a beautiful smell.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. I tried growing it when I lived in Grayton and it got too cold.
Yeah.
It didn't come back.
In the Golden Gate Park, there's a lot of it, but it dies here because we got a frost, and it dies early on, like October. The first frost, it's gone, but it comes back every year, and so I'm just wondering, should I just keep the big stalks, or?
Is it when it's coming back every year, is it regenerating from the base?
Yeah, usually.
I would cut the stalks back then, unless you're seeing any kind of new growth on the stalks year to year.
Okay.
Okay, you guys, I think we're gonna wrap up for tonight, but thank you all so much for joining us. It was so fun to actually interact with you guys and hang out for a little bit and see all your faces. How refreshing. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie and Serena. This was really wonderful.
Oh, good.
Yes,
well, we
thank
look
you
forward to
so
the next
much.
one.
Yeah.
Yes. Hopefully we'll see some of you guys
And
next month.
informative.
All right. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Happy pruning, everyone.
Right.
Yeah.